Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. CNBC recently put out a new video, a new episode of Millennial Money, which is another episode about our very own Graham Stephan, the god king of YouTube finance. I think I speak for many YouTube creators in that Graham has been and remains an inspiration for us finance creators and really just YouTube creators in general. As a non-millionaire myself on the path towards financial independence, I thought this would be a great opportunity to offer my unsolicited perspective and maybe even give Graham some advice to better his financial position that much more. Granted, Graham, this isn't financial advice by any means, and you should definitely do your own research, but I think you already knew that. Though, if you're in the market for a commercial real estate attorney, definitely give me a call and I'd be happy to help. Anyways, let's get into this video.
And this is my office. Come on in. Very superstitious, so I always have to sit right here to post a video. If we don't sit right here, we have a bad video.
You know, this is actually a pretty good point. In fact, the reason I'm sitting in this spot right now, in front of my ripped up basement wall from all the water damage we had recently, is because the last video I filmed here actually did quite well. And we don't want to mess with some good YouTube juju, since that is very important. And we definitely don't want to upset the YouTube gods if they like something. So feast your eyes on my hideous basement, and we'll see how this video does too.
Since 2019, my income has almost tripled. YouTube is very much like the snowball effect, where all the work you put in starts building up that momentum, which builds more momentum, which builds even more momentum. There have been a lot of changes throughout these last 2 years. I've moved to Las Vegas. I now have 5 YouTube channels. I've doubled down on the content I'm putting out, and things are busier than ever. My name is Graham Stephan. I'm 31 years old. I make $6.1 million a year in Las Vegas, Nevada. And this is, wait for it, Millennial Money.
I suppose we should address the elephant in the room, and that's the fact that Graham makes $6 million a year. That is no joke. No matter what you're doing, that is a ton of money, and it means that you're producing at a very high level. In this case, he doubled down on his YouTube content, and he's really focused on something that he has a great skill set in, and that he's very motivated to actually work on and improve, and it's definitely paid off handsomely. He's really concentrated his bet, using his time at least, towards this YouTube venture, and it has really paid off. And that is a common theme with a lot of high performers. They put a lot of their time towards something they're really good at, or they have some sort of competitive advantage. And one of those advantages is often extra motivation and discipline to actually keep at it for a very long time. Graham's done this for quite a few years now in building up his YouTube empire, and like I said, it's definitely paid off.
My day is really boring. People think it's really exciting. Honestly, 10 hours a day is probably just spent just in front of a computer. So I would say usually I'll wake up anywhere between like 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. And then I walk 20 feet to my office, I close the door, and usually I don't come out until like 6 p.m., sometimes 7, but in that office, I'm just trying to think of video ideas. I'm trying to plan out different concepts.
Now that's a pretty extreme routine to be doing every single day if he's really just slogging away on the computer all the time, maybe not getting as much fresh air as you might like. Now that's a pretty tough routine to maintain, and I should definitely know since I work in big law and we work very long days. And it's the kind of work that requires a lot of focus and energy. You gotta be fresh if you're gonna be able to come up with, in Graham's case, very creative ideas and do really good work that way. And there is something to be said about sustainability, making sure you can keep up this routine for a long time. Otherwise, you might burn out in a very bad way and then crash and burn. I'm not saying it's gonna happen to Graham since he seems to really enjoy what he does, but it's definitely something to pay attention to when you're trying to build a business, making sure that you can actually maintain the schedule you're trying to put out to actually produce at a very high level. And
usually then after about 6 p.m., 6:30, we're wrapped up and try to take the rest of the day off. So since the first episode, Macy moved in with me, and it's been really nice that like throughout the day I could take like little breaks and we could hang out, we could kind of see each other. And it's nice just to kind of take myself out of the computer every now and then and just clear my mind and just relax a little bit throughout the day.
Like I was saying, sustainability is very important, and mixing in breaks, I'm sure, helps to that.
So I grew up in Los Angeles my entire life. It's really all I knew, and when the pandemic hit, it really made me reevaluate where I wanted to be and where I wanted to work. And once I came up to Las Vegas to see a friend, we really got to experience a different side that I'd never seen before. And I really liked it, and I was able to get so much more for the money. I was able to get so much more space. Everything was less expensive, and that allowed me to expand my entire business in ways that just was not as possible in Los Angeles.
And Graham's definitely not alone in this. There have been a lot of people who've moved out of higher tax areas into lower cost living areas. And like Graham said, that could be a huge chunk towards your business as well. If you don't have to pay the extra 10, 15% in taxes just by moving across the state border to some other city or state, that can have a huge impact on your business. If you could basically improve your profitability by 10%, pretty much any business is going to take that if all you have to do is a simple move. Granted, moving can be quite difficult. In this case, LA to Las Vegas might be a lot easier than something like LA down to Florida or something a little bit more long distance, though it kind of depends on a lot of things. Proximity to family, friends. It's not a super simple decision, but definitely a very lucrative one in Graham's case.
There's certainly a financial component to moving here as well that would allow me to get a home that is almost 4,000 square feet for half the cost in Los Angeles. It allows me to have people working from the house all day, that we could collaborate with each other, that just wasn't as doable in Los Angeles. And there's certainly the state income tax. I would be saving 13.3% living here, and so that has to be factored in, that allows me more money left over that I could reinvest elsewhere. And a lot of that money just goes back into the business.
This is something I've really liked to see from Graham, which was hiring new people into his business. You have Alex and Jack being the main players there. And I really think he should double down on that and continue to hire more people. He definitely has more of a built on bedrock approach where he's very slowly growing that team out, making sure he picks the very best people for his team culture. And so far it's worked brilliantly, but he could be sacrificing some serious growth if he doesn't bring on enough team members because of how much money he's able to generate through YouTube. And he could potentially generate a lot more content, maybe outside of his existing channels and on even different platforms as well, if he could build out that team a little bit more, since he certainly could afford it right now. But it ultimately depends on his long-term goal with YouTube and creating content on social media. It is a very time-intensive thing, and you're going to need to have a pretty strong team to do it. And if he doesn't want to build a massive media empire long term, then it may not make as much sense as continuing to build a very slow growing team that otherwise has very high quality players. And on the faster growth path, I wouldn't exactly endorse hiring lower quality candidates, but simply looking a little bit more towards that growth lens rather than being very scared and hesitant to build up the team.
It also really helps too that it seems like a lot of the financial guys on YouTube all live in Las Vegas, and it almost seems to play into the whole frugality thing where you are living in an area where your money goes further. And it was something that I've never experienced before because I've always lived in Los Angeles, so that was the norm. So leaving that and being able to experience something new just gave me a much wider perspective of what else was out there.
And that's something that's pretty hard to put an exact value on. When you move to a new place or go for some new opportunity, it can bring with it many different intangible benefits. In this case, proximity to other financial YouTubers like Jeremy from Financial Education and Andre Jick. Obviously, that has plenty of value in itself, but it's really hard to quantify that value. So kind of look at the whole picture when you're making some sort of big move like that. But it's good that Graham's gotten some serious benefits outside of just saving on taxes and that sort of stuff with the move he did to Las Vegas.
The money I keep in bank accounts has certainly increased, and some of that is just to continually pay taxes as they're due. But the other aspect of it is that I am always on the hunt for a good deal, and I never know where that's gonna come. So I prefer to keep some cash on the sidelines, just if I see a good real estate deal come up. If there's a good investment opportunity, I'm always able to jump on that.
It's a lot different than when you have a very tiny portfolio where your actual annual salary would replace the value of that portfolio anyways in a few months, because the needle's not going to move very much if you compound your returns in a big way by holding cash to the side and then actually capitalizing on a really good deal rather than just investing that money right away and riding the market returns. What I'm trying to say is, because of scale, Graham's opportunity cost is very different than someone else's who might have a much smaller portfolio. He can go for much bigger deals with much bigger discounts potentially, or with with much bigger upside, whatever the case. And that's something that makes holding a larger cash allocation potentially more worth it in his case than with a small portfolio where getting a 1 or 2% outsized return isn't going to make nearly as much difference as simply going out and making more money because the portfolio just isn't as big compared to your actual income. In this case, Graham's net worth is many millions of dollars. He does have a few million in debt in there from what I understand. So having that extra cash there as reserves and just as sort of a dry powder fund to go for whatever he wants to go for, I'm sure not only helps him sleep at night knowing that he could go for opportunities whenever he wants, but he also has that big giant safety net in the event that he needs to pay off debt quickly or just needs that extra flexibility. I'm sure it does not hurt. But he did mention taxes, and I do want to get back to that towards the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, let's continue.
Every single time I walk by to the kitchen, I'm just sitting here looking at it for like 30 minutes. And every single time you see something new.
Spending $45,000 on a fish tank might seem ludicrous to most people, and I mean, it kind of is if you don't care about fish, but in this case, it's a passion of Graham's, so he did it because he can enjoy it, and really, in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small portion of his income, and if it makes him that much happier, it's hard to say that it's not worth it in his case. After all, if you're going to put all this work into building this huge portfolio and making a ton of money, what's the point if you're not going to spend it on at least something? With due care, of course.
So I still track every week all the money that comes in, all the money that goes out, but there is really no budget at this point that I stick to because the default is always, I'm going to save.
So Graham says he doesn't have a budget anymore, which makes sense since he really has that sort of frugality mindset in that he's not trying to waste money. He's trying to think, if I'm going to spend money, I want it to produce some sort of outsized value in return. He's not trying to get gypped on his own spending. Even for more luxury items like his fish tank, I'm sure he weighed the cost pretty carefully compared to the benefit he would enjoy. It is a cost-benefit analysis, to use a very economic and very nerdy term. But in any event, per this Millennial Money chart, he's spending about $9,500 per month, which will just kind of round up to a bit over $100,000, $120,000 per year in spending, and that is including his mortgage. So in the grand scheme of things, he's spending, 1 to 2%, less than 2% of his annual income of $6.1 million. So that's a 98% savings rate, but that's before taxes. It did mention that he pays a pretty significant amount of taxes, which again, we'll get back to in a second. But that is a tiny fraction relative to what he's actually earning. And if you remove the mortgage payment here, we're only left with something like $3,000 per month in kind of discretionary spending. And it doesn't include his employees, it looks like. So Jack and Alex, who I'm sure get paid a pretty substantial amount of money since I think they provide a lot of value to the channel, at least from what I understand as an outsider, but that doesn't include it here. But that would be more of a business expense anyways, and this looks to be much more about personal expenditures. But if you remove the mortgage, which I'm sure a large portion of that goes towards principal, and it's probably a very low interest rate mortgage as well. I forget the exact rate that Graham's paying if he's stated it on the channel, but that's, again, about $3,000 left over, about $36,000 to $40,000 per year that he's spending towards kind of more personal expenditures and basic expenses, again, compared to $6.1 million in income that seems to only be going up. He could easily double or triple this and he'd still be in a really, really strong position relative to his income.
If I do spend money, I mean, it's not enough to ever really move the needle. At the very most, it's going out to all-you-can-eat sushi at like $21 a person. And that's me even like extravagantly spending. There it is, super sushi. From a spending standpoint, there are some changes from about 2 years ago. The biggest change was that back then, I would do anything just for the sake of cutting back a little bit more and saving. And at this point, I definitely eased up a little bit. And the biggest thing that I would say that I've started spending money on that I never imagined in the past was being able to buy back my time. As an example of that, I would say sometimes delivering food to the house. If that means that I could save an hour and a half, or even I could spend an extra hour and a half with Macy so she doesn't have to cook. Even getting a house cleaner, that was something that I've never done before.
So that is a really huge distinction that many of the most successful people have versus those who might not be in the same position, and that they really, really value their time, at least a lot more than the average person. And they look at the opportunity costs of their time. What if I were to just hire this out, have someone else do it, and then I got to get my time back? And you really have to put a value on your time, which can be pretty difficult in itself. In this case, Graham's time is worth a lot of money, since not only is it scarce, and he's already allocating a lot of it towards the YouTube channel, for example, he's also making a lot of money with the time he is spending towards things like the YouTube channel. And if he could spend more time towards that, or more times towards more leisure-oriented things that he could value in whatever way he wants, if he really values those things more, then he could hire out his otherwise more productive times and use them towards leisure or whatever he wants to do, because there is value to that as well. This is why I definitely think Graham should consider hiring out more people, so that if he does want to pull away from the business a little bit for a while, he can. And in this case, it doesn't seem like he can really do that yet, since he is so ingrained into the business, which has definitely worked out, don't get me wrong. But if he's looking long-term and doesn't want to keep doing that for the rest of his life, but he still wants to maintain the business in some way, that's something I think he should look a lot more heavily into.
So when we filmed the first episode, I was spending about 20% of my time working as a real estate agent, and then the other 80% of the time, till probably like 2 o'clock in the morning every single night, I'd be making YouTube videos. But when the pandemic hit and we were all just inside, that was the point for me where I was like, I want to just go all in on YouTube.
Now would be a great time to plug my affiliate links in the description below, since that would help the channel out a lot. You can get some free stuff down there too, so please help a guy out while you're at it, and go check out Graham's affiliate links if you haven't already, since he puts them at the bottom of all of his videos too.
So in 2020, the YouTube ad revenue made about $2.5 million, and in 2021, we're on track to probably hit about $2.8 to $3 million by the end of the year. Hey guys, want to come to the office?
Yeah.
Cool. 2 years ago, I was pretty much doing everything myself. And it got to a point about a year and a half ago where I had no time. I mean, I was going from probably 6 o'clock in the morning to 8, 9 p.m. at night. As much as I enjoyed it, it was slowly wearing down on me. And the tipping point for me was really when I started to see my own content and my own work decline. So Jack now we have full time. He edits the videos on the second channel. He runs the podcast with me. We've just recently hired on Alex, who helps edit some of those videos on the podcast. He's doing the vlog. And these are things that just wouldn't be possible on my own. I enjoyed just being like a one-man operation. I took a lot of pride in the fact that, like, you know, look at all these people out there with these huge teams, and look at how much I'm able to accomplish on my own. But I think at a certain point that was holding me back from continuing to grow, because there's only so much work that I could do before just mentally you get burned out, and then at that point work begins to suffer.
This is exactly what we were talking about earlier about sustainability, and then also if he wants to scale, bringing on new people with new talents, or at least people with the same level of talent as him in certain areas. It's the ability to expand your time that much more and really expand the business in a big way. I definitely think Graham's going to continue to hire on more people as he gets more comfortable with it, and I think that is going to pay huge dividends in the long term if he keeps doing that.
Back then, like 2-3 years ago, I was indiscriminate about where I would be spending my time. I would work 2 a.m. I would wake up at 6 a.m. I just wouldn't care. I would just work. It didn't matter where I spent my time as long as I was doing something productive. Now I feel like I work a lot more efficiently, and every hour of my day is allocated to doing something. So I really look at where is my time best spent? How am I able to get the most done during that time? And I've done my best to try to find as much balance as I can between having a life a little bit and working, even though I will say, like, work is my life in quite a big sense. And I enjoy it, but I've definitely become a lot more efficient and balanced in the process.
And I think a big reason he's been able to do that is because he has outsourced certain tasks with his channel, so he can get some of his time back and then focus it more on the things that he is most efficient at, or the things that he really wants to work on and is most motivated to work on. There's really a lot to be said about the power of a great team, and that's really in any business.
I certainly think there is that risk of building your entire career on YouTube and potentially being at the whims of an algorithm. But I think to counteract that, we have such a supportive community. I've tried to diversify a little bit to other platforms, and if something were to happen, I would always have something else to fall back on, and that relieves some of the stress or some of the need to, keep the hamster wheel going and really do this from a place of authenticity in the sense that I really enjoy making content, not so much because it's oh, I need to sustain this lifestyle that just disappears if something were to happen to it.
And there's something to be said about that no stream of income, no asset is inherently indestructible. There's always a chance that you could lose one of those streams, and then you're going to have to find something else to lean on. That's why it's so important to try and build up new income streams from different sources so that if one goes out, you still have others to fall back on. And Graham has certainly put a lot of his effort towards doing that. But like I said, I do want to talk about taxes because I think that's something that Graham has really struggled with in the past couple of years. Moving to Las Vegas is certainly going to help that in a big way. But I think there are other things that Graham could be doing to really lower his tax bill. And at his income tax rate, being able to whittle down some taxes is going to make a much bigger difference than maybe someone with a much lower income. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so I've mentioned that I would talk about taxes a few times now. Well, here's what I'm really getting at here. Here's three situations. We have one where Graham holds all of his money in cash, doesn't invest any of it. We have another where he invests it all in stocks. And we have the rest where he does something like real estate or something that will have tax advantages. Get to that in just a moment. But anyways, let's set the baseline here. His normal marginal income tax rate, we'll say, is something like 30% or whatever he happens to be paying. We'll draw that line right there. We'll say that is where he would be paying taxes. Everything above that would normally be getting paid in taxes if he doesn't do some sort of special deduction or something to lower that tax bill. So let's take a look at the first example where he holds everything in cash. He doesn't invest anything. All of the money that he earns in income just gets to sit in a pile of cash. He's going to have to pay taxes on that money most likely since there's no deductions that come with just saving money in a regular savings account. It's just taxed as regular income. We'll say everything above this 30% line or whatever his tax rate is, this is all being paid in taxes. He doesn't get to keep any of that. So that is like a loss. He is not going to be able to keep any of that money. And that's something that he ran into last year, apparently. He paid a very substantial tax bill because he wasn't able to spend that money towards something that could earn him a deduction. Now, what about stocks, you ask? Well, there aren't many deductions that come with just investing in stocks straight up. You don't get to depreciate the stocks or anything like that. You can do tax loss harvesting and that sort of thing by selling stocks at a loss. It's not really something that's going to save you a lot of money because you have to actually earn a real loss in the first place, and then you get to lower your tax bill that way. So I'm not really going to rely on that as a huge strategy here to lower your tax bill, but we'll just say if you were to pour all of your money in stocks and then just leave it there and buy and hold forever, you don't actually sell it at any point, you're going to be paying taxes on the income you earned anyways before you invested that money. So in this case, all that goes towards taxes too. So pretty much no matter what, he has an uphill battle now compared to some other investment that he could get a deduction in because he has all of this ground to make up. So even if the stocks do really well, that is a pretty steep burden to get over. Now, what about real estate, or really just more broadly, anything that he could buy that would give him a large deduction to where he'd actually be able to keep the asset, but also not have to pay taxes on the income that he would have paid that year? Real estate is a great example. You can do something called depreciation where you get to write off the value of the property. With commercial properties in particular that get up to larger dollar values, you can do something called a cost segregation analysis, where you can write off a massive portion of the building in the first year or two, or at least at a much faster depreciation schedule than a typical depreciation schedule that you might see when you just buy and hold a property. I'm not going to get too into the weeds in that sort of strategy now. I've done other videos on depreciation in the past. But in general, if you were to write off a large portion of the commercial property or whatever it is he's buying and do a cost segregation analysis, he'd get to keep that asset and not have to pay taxes on the income he earns. So now we switch to a green marker. He's going to get to keep this money rather than pay it in taxes. So that almost works like a gain in his case because he normally would be having to pay it in the baseline case. But if he puts it into something much more tax efficient, he gets to keep the money on his net worth. He gets to keep an asset. Maybe he buys a piece of commercial real estate. It might not even be a great deal, but he gets to save 30% on his taxes. So it's like he's getting a great deal on paper because of how much he doesn't have to pay in taxes. Even if the deal in isolation might not be the best deal, he might not be getting a super high return on the money. Any return is better than just paying 30% right off the gate. So that's something I think Graham should look much more into in the future, is trying to find ways to get that tax bill down. Maybe that's by hiring more employees, investing more into his business, or buying more assets that have big tax write-offs towards the beginning of their lives, like a cost segregation analysis for a piece of commercial real estate. He's already into real estate, so it seems like that would be a natural fit. We'll see what he does in the future, but that's just my 2 cents on that issue. And yes, I did buy a whiteboard, and I'm excited to get to use it on the channel in the future. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much, Graham, for your inspiration to me and to the countless other finance YouTubers and YouTubers beyond the finance space that you have undoubtedly helped to get started on their YouTube journeys and other social media endeavors. And that's before we even talk about all the people you've inspired to better their own financial positions and work towards a better financial future. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. So if you like this video, please like it. It's helped the channel out a lot. And go check out Graham's channel if by the random chance you've never seen his content before. Go check it out since he has a great channel. And for those of you Graham fans in the audience, let's try to get him to take a look at this video. I definitely would love to get his thoughts on my thoughts about him in his Millennial Money episode. But until next time, take care.